Lex is here. Chris Bunka, the CEO and chairman of Lexaria Bioscience, LEXX. See, there he is. I wasn't lying to you. Chris, how are we doing?
That's a great introduction. I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm not as hyped up as whoever that was in our chat. There was like, "Where's Len?" And I was like, "He's coming." I don't know. It's not time for him yet, but he's here now. So, Chris, there we go. Can we get in presentation mode, please?
Do you know, it's just not working that way. We've been struggling with it the last 30 minutes. So this is the closest we've been able to get. So I apologize that it's not perfect, but I think it'll work.
All right. Well, there we go. I got something now. Thanks, Chelsea. All right. I'm going to get off and let you do your thing.
All right. Well, thank you very much for allowing Lexaria to present today. I am Chris Bunka. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the company. We recently uplisted to NASDAQ, LEXX, in January of this year. We, of course, are a public company, and so you need to familiarize yourself with our disclaimer. One page, sort of 40,000 foot snapshot of the company. We are a drug delivery technology company. We're a technology company. We're not a cannabis company. We're not a psychedelics company, and we're not a drug company. We are a drug delivery technology company. And our technology is so broad that it makes it difficult sometimes to communicate the story because we play in so many different sectors. Right now, for example, we are already patent granted for delivery of oral nicotine, NSAIDs, things like ibuprofen or aspirin, cannabinoids and fat-soluble vitamins. We're patent pending for antiviral drugs, phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Those are things commonly known as, say, Viagra or Cialis, human hormones, and a number of other drug classes. The drug delivery platform that we have is the same for all of these drug classes. Some of the formulations change. Therefore, we're really, really pleased that we have patents both for the technology itself as well as for many different patented formulations. What we do is we get a larger fraction of these drugs into the bloodstream and even across the blood-brain barrier, which is really a huge added benefit in many cases. I need to update this because we just announced yesterday, I believe, our 19th granted patent. It's the first one we've been granted in the country of India. We are focused this year primarily on hypertension and antiviral work, as well as oral nicotine. Oral nicotine, of course, our longer followers will know that we have agreements in place already, formal agreements, formal relationships with both Altria in the United States and for R&D purposes, British American Tobacco internationally. A great many people in the company, I'm not going to belabor this, just a few, including myself and my president, John Doherty. John is really the science kind of engine or visionary behind the company. He has a long history, 2.5 decades in biopharma and biotech, including a number of patents granted for drug delivery technologies. Greg Smith, one of our strategic advisors and a shareholder, well known, he's on CNBC all the time, one of the early investors in Juul, Pax Labs, Beyond Meat. And Dr. Phil Ainsley, I've highlighted in this presentation because of his contribution to our hypertension program that we're going to be talking about here today. Again, for 2021, now look, I'm going to show you a lot of info today, but for 2021, these are the 3 primary areas we're focused, although there's a half a dozen more that we'll get to. And you can see from this slide that they're each very, very large markets. The CBD for hypertension is something that we are trying to sort of stake ground around and sort of own that space if we can. And I'll show you how and why we think that might be possible. It's something we're super, super excited about. And one of the ways that we can communicate and show to you how excited we are about the hypertension program is from this slide that's showing you some, this is not complete, some of the research programs that are either currently underway or expected to be underway soon. On this slide, you'll see 2 areas of focus, hypertension and antiviral, 5 studies in the hypertension, 4 studies in the antiviral. We have another half a dozen studies spread out amongst other areas this year. We were delighted last week to be able to release the first news from our 2021 hypertension work. That was Hyper A211. A, by the way, stands for animal. H, lower in the column, stands for human. And when you see the letter C, it means it's a cellular test. So this was our first bit of hypertension news for the year. It was very successful. I have some of the data coming up, and it inspired an epic day on the market. We traded 48 million shares that day of releasing that news, which was quite interesting to us in the company, considering we only have 5.1 million shares issued and outstanding. We also have 4 antiviral studies in progress for the year. You can see some of the study dates coming up, and we're excited about all of these. We think these could be significant drivers of value creation in the company this year. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I'm going to hope that most people are familiar with what we do and how, but I'll give a quick intro. The drug delivery platform is very constant, as I say, regardless of the drug class. So we combine the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the drug, with a fatty acid oil. We apply that to a dry, powdered, particulate substance. We try to work with food grade substances, things like gum arabic or xanthan gum, tapioca starch, partly because those all have GRAS standing, generally recognized as safe with the FDA. We then perform our patented dehydration processing steps, and what comes out is a dry powder with the drug baked into it, now ready to be pressed into a pill, used to fill a capsule, or be used as an ingredient in a CPG, a consumer packaged good, such as a chocolate or anything else that you might think of. We do this because one of the things we're very proud of in Lexaria is that, unlike much of the pharmaceutical and biotech industry, we do not use a sledgehammer to deliver your drug. We don't need to knock down a house the way a lot of other drug companies do. We work within the body's existing systems. So we already know that your pancreas, liver, gallbladder, stomach, and intestines all communicate to each other. I can go into it, but we don't have time today. They communicate to each other with sensory cells about what is in those organs and what the other organs can do to aid in the digestive and absorptive process. Our technology works with that. These fatty acids are key to it. And because of that, once the food articles or the drug articles have made their way into the upper intestine, which, by the way, is only minutes after you swallow it, we are able to start transporting those drugs across the intestinal wall. And this is where the magic happens, folks. Instead of going into the hepatic vein destined for the liver, the drugs are delivered into the lymphatic lacteals primarily, and this allows the drugs to reach the blood circulation without being metabolized first by the liver. And this is called first liver bypass or metabolic bypass. And it allows the drug in its native form, unchanged, to have one opportunity to circulate through the body and bind with the receptor cells. All of this done for a number of different benefits, and it depends a little bit on the product class, what these benefits are. But for things you put in your mouth, clearly you don't want it to taste foul. We mask bitter flavors, matters a lot in the cannabinoid industry, for example. We improve the speed of onset, and this is dramatic. At times from 100 or 120 minutes down to 2, 5, 10, and 15 minutes. So a real dramatic decrease in time. We get a lot more of it into the bloodstream. That's what bioavailability is. And we were astonished in 2018 to learn that we crossed the blood-brain barrier much more effectively. We'll talk about that. And all of this at pennies per serving to our corporate clients. We don't sell anything directly to the consumer anymore. We are strictly a B2B business. I mentioned a couple slides ago that we were in a lot of different sectors. Well, I'm not kidding. On this page, you can see some of the other areas of investigation just for 2021. So we're going to be doing studies, PK or pharmacokinetic studies this year on phosphodiesterase inhibitors, human hormones, ibuprofen and naproxen, oral mucosal nicotine that is absorbed in the oral cavity, oral cannabinoids, not just for CBD for hypertension, but oral cannabinoids for the retail consumer packaged good industry, and even vitamin D3. Put all these together, it's another $100 billion in market size that we're trying to substantiate our technology within. While all this is going on the blue sky, and the blue sky for our company is enormous, we also are building organically a day-to-day revenue building business. That business is running currently at about a $1 million per year run rate. We expect that to double to roughly $2 million a year over the next year based on the projections and the purchase orders we have from our existing client base. So I am not including in these numbers any possible or prospective new clients that we might be in discussions with. We always are in discussions with those prospective new clients, but just based on our existing client base, revenues are growing. I know they're small, but also keep in mind, folks, that unlike a lot of companies, say in the cannabis industry, we don't have negative profit margins or profit margins of 10%, as many of those companies do. Our positive cash flow from this $1 million is in excess of 50%. So because our business model relies primarily on royalty generation as opposed to selling goods, those royalties are very close to a 100% profit margin. Finally, on this slide, I'll just mention, this is ancient history now, it happened a few months ago, but when we uplisted to NASDAQ, we needed to dispose of any assets that were generating revenue from the cannabis industry, and we sold that division to Hill Street Beverages, and they now are operating that side of things. This graph is really something you need to burn into your memory if you're interested in who we are. On the right-hand side, you'll see the solid black line versus a dotted gray line. The gray line was the result from a human study that was conducted by a so-called competitor of ours that was using a nanotechnology to deliver a 100 milligram dose of CBD into human beings. From left to right in minutes is the time, and vertically is measured the quantity of drug. And you can see that they required 4 hours to reach a peak. It's a pretty slow and gradual curve. And actually at the first blood draw, which was 30 minutes, they were still pretty much stuck on zero. Separate study, we delivered a 90 milligram dose with DehydraTECH. You can see at our first blood draw, which was also 30 minutes, we already had reached a level that the competing technology required over 2 hours to reach. Now, I have to tell you folks, I see all of our data internally. This is pretty standard. I'm used to seeing this more or less in all the studies we do to date. You can see that we peaked in the 90 to 120 minute range, and that our peak is 2 times or more that of our competitor. This is what we do, and it's Really, really important, especially when you're talking not so much about CBD, but imagine if you're taking CBD to treat a seizure. Imagine if you're taking a pain medication and you want relief from that pain. Do you really want to wait 2 to 4 hours for it to kick in? I don't think so. That's why our tech is really creating a lot of waves. On this table or this graph, the black line is the same. You can also see the statistical error bars. This matters for the scientists among you. And the gray line is our own control from that same human clinical study that we ran in 2018. Now, I want to point something out to you folks. We're going to talk about this. This is important. This is a 90 milligram dose. The human clinical study that we have underway right now, as I speak, is using a 300 milligram dose. And the new human study of this year is using an advanced formula that we did not know of back in 2018. All of that designed to get a lot more CBD into bloodstream even more quickly than we did 2 and 3 years ago. And notice on the left-hand side of the screen, the second from the bottom bullet, we dropped human blood pressure in this 2018 study by about 5% with this tiny dose. This is a number you need to keep in your mind for what I'm about to talk to you about, which is hypertension. It's almost a $30 billion market. Listen to this, only 1 person in 5 actually treats it. In other words, if everybody who's diagnosed with hypertension actually treated it, it would be a $150 billion market. So you got to ask yourself why people are not treating a prescribed disease that they have. And the answer is usually one of 2 things. One, it's either you're just too expensive and people choose to live with the disease, or number 2, a lot of the hypertension drugs that are out on the market have some really nasty side effects. And when you think about Lexaria's ability to deliver these drugs so effectively, we can use a lower dose and a lower initial dose that you swallow in order to get an equivalent or even superior quantity of the drug into your bloodstream. And that means we can lower side effects. And in the case of CBD, we're hopeful that there will be no side effects at all. And one of the reasons I say that is because of one of the other pioneers in the industry, which of course was GW Pharmaceuticals, recently bought out for over $7 billion. GW, in their quest to get CBD regulated by the FDA, which was of course successful, and they're using Epidiolex, which is a generic form of CBD, to treat pediatric seizure disorders. Well, of course, in their studies and submissions to FDA, there were no significant side effects that were noted, even at a 1,200 and 1,400 milligram per day dose. So 1,200 and 1,400 milligrams. So as I said a moment ago, in the human clinical study that's underway right now, we expect dosing in that study to be completed this month. We're moving very, very fast. We're going to use a 300 milligram dose. We are using a 300 milligram dose, and we're using an advanced DehydraTECH 2.0 formula. The net effect of those 2 things, folks, is that we are hopeful, we won't know until we see the data, but we're hopeful and expecting to see 8 or maybe 10 times more CBD in bloodstream than we did in the 2018 study. That's the way the math works. And if we get that 8 or 10-fold increase in CBD in blood plasma, we're hopeful of being able to show a double or triple in that blood pressure reduction into that 10 or 15% range from the 5% in 2018. And here's the punchline, everyone. If we're able to do that, if we're able to get to a 10 or 15% reduction, we feel that we will have a commercially competitive alternative to the other hypertension drugs in the industry today. Of course, we still got a long path in front of us, still have to go through the entire FDA registration process, but a lot of the risk, at least from a scientific point of view, would have been taken out of the story. This is a table we just published last week. Quite frankly, We were pretty surprised to get the result that we got in the marketplace, but this press release and this table is what drove, I don't know, $350 million worth of trading in our stock that day. So you can see for yourself some of the numbers in this column that the MCT, which is a coconut oil industry standard formulation, the original DehydraTECH from 2016, 2017, the original DehydraTECH 2.0 from 2018, and then the later varieties tested just in the last couple of months. You can see the increase that just continues as we continue to perfect our technology. And it's amazing because when you start to get the multiplier effect, you start getting into this 2,000% improvement in getting CBD into human bloodstream. So it's pretty dramatic. We're excited as heck about it, and we're not stopping. As you saw from the earlier slides, we have roughly a dozen studies going on this year. Switching gears, different market. I'm not going to spend much time here because this is 2 years old, but the nicotine market is the biggest market that we participate in. It's really, if you include China, which we really can't because that's a closed market, it's very nearly a $1 trillion a year market. And we would like to make an oral nicotine alternative to smoking or vaping. We are anti-smoking. We are anti-vaping. We do not think that people who are not currently using nicotine should use nicotine, but for the 1.3 billion people who smoke, we can help save lives, we feel, with our technology through this same drug delivery platform. And a couple of our animal studies from 2018, now in this particular slide, you can see blood samples on the left column every 15 minutes, on the right column every 2 minutes, at least to start. And you can see the improvements, again, very similar to our CBD work, 50, 70, 90% more nicotine, 1,100% faster, 300 and 500% more nicotine into brain tissue. This really matters for nicotine, by the way, folks, because in the human animal, the vast majority of your nicotine receptor cells exist in your brain. So if you can't get it across the blood-brain barrier, it's not going to do much good. We're very good at it. That data and others is what led Altria to enter a commercial licensing agreement with us, and British American Tobacco ultimately to enter an R&D agreement with us. Altria does not have any products in the marketplace with our tech. We hope that they will one day. And if they do, we have already agreed to the commercial terms. British American Tobacco is evaluating for the global market, which quite frankly, we're a little more excited about given the different regulatory jurisdictions around the world.
Chris, I'm going to jump in here because we're running a few minutes over time. So
Okay.
we've got to wrap it up. But Chris, you can see Chris bunk up on the screen right now. His company is Lexaria Biosciences, LEXX. Chris, thanks so much. And any more questions, guys, the URL is up on the screen. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you so much.